Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Michelle Morius and I make art tutorials that are fun, easy, and accessible for everyone. Today we're going to be doing this cute little duckling in the water in pan pastels, hard pastels, and carbothello pencils, and I'm using UArt sanded paper. Before we get into the video, please subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment below I subscribed, and I'll be sure to get back to each and every one of you. So I've transferred my image by putting it on a piece of paper and then turning the paper over and putting some soft pastel on the back. In this case I put some yellow pastel on the back of it, and then I turned it over, put it on top of my UArt sanded paper, and I took a pencil and I outlined over my sketch, which left the yellow chalk on my UArt paper. And this is what I'm using as my little map. And now I'm going in with my base colors, and I just want to get a good coat of my base colors down so that I have all the pieces to my puzzle so that I can add my details as we go along. So I really just want to get a good coat of pastel down on the paper, and this will give us a good base layer to blend everything else into. So it's up to you. You can use your carbothello pencils for a base layer, you can use your pan pastels, or you can use your soft pastels. I'm kind of using a little bit of everything, depending on what color I'm going for. If I don't find that color in my carbothellos, then I'll go into my soft pastels and see if I have a stick of a better color that I'm looking for. Or I'm gonna just put down several layers and blend them together to create a new color. So the pan pastels are really easy for the background, so in this case the water, and I'm going to use those pencils for most of my detail work, all of that fuzzy duck fur, and of course for the eyes and the real delicate details. So I thought I'd try something new, and I did try this UArt paper. Normally I use Clairefontaine pastel matte paper, which is my favorite. This paper, it worked okay. It's not my favorite. It has more tooth than the Clairefontaine pastel matte paper does. So it's rougher. It does wear down your pencils a little bit quicker. It's not too bad though. It's just much rougher, and I found that my fingers were getting a little raw from rubbing it in with my fingers. So my favorite paper, and on the next one I will use the pastel matte. But I thought I'd try something different. This is a little bit less expensive paper, and I wanted to see how it would perform, and it did perform fairly well. It's just not as great as the pastel matte. It's always good to try new things, and I went out of the box here and just tried something different. But I will use up the paper that I have. We'll use it on some other projects, and I'm going to try it out on some colored pencils as well. But it's fairly rough. So I'm going in and I'm making sure that the strokes that I'm putting in on the duck are in the direction that fuzzy little duck feathers are going in. So you don't want to go haphazardly and put your strokes in just any old direction or just scrub in a bunch of color. You do want to put it in the same direction as that little duck fur is going, and this will have a better result when you go to put your final layers on top, because everything will just come alive and look more realistic. So you want to be mindful as you're putting all these layers down. We're going to do so many layers on this little duck that you want to be able to blend in between. Every time you put down a new layer, I like to blend it in. And this pushes the pastel down into the little valleys of the paper and leaves the tooth exposed to add our details later on. So as you can see, we can still see the parts of the paper showing through, so we still have quite a bit more layers to put down, especially in the water part. I'm building up on the duck now, so we're getting there with our layers on the duck, but the water still needs a lot more layers, and this will allow us to blend in, and all of that water will look a lot smoother. So our little ducky has a lot of colors going on in him. He's got everything from light yellow, dark browns, light browns, tans. He's got a little bit of everything. And in my base layers, I like to put some brighter colors so that you can put some darks and lights on top. Pastel works in either direction. You can either go from dark to light or light to dark, whatever you like, because it's such a forgiving medium. But you want to keep your really light areas light from the beginning, because it does get a little bit difficult to put like whites over blacks. But you can layer them, but I like to keep those pure highlights a little pure from the beginning. So I'm going in and I'm just deepening up all of those yellows, and we're adding in some ochres, and we're just going in the little direction of his little feathers, and he's going to start looking really fluffy soon. So we are getting down a lot of pastel now, and you don't want to be blending in your final layers. So if any blending that has to be done, you need to do it now, and that way your details will go right on top, and you don't want to smudge in your details. So we want each little stroke to show through. So now is the point where you're going to blend all of those things in the duck. I'm going in with some pan pastels, and I'm just adding some deeper tones in there, and then we're going to hit our background. Now, I did find with this UArt paper that it was really chewing up my sofft tools. The sofft tool has a spongy like applicator kind of cover on it, and it was tearing the heck out of it. The Clairefontaine paper has a little bit smoother finish. It still has a nice tooth, but a smoother finish, and I don't find that it chews up my applicators quite as quickly or as roughly as this paper was doing. But live and learn. It was a good exercise, and if you guys have used the UArt paper, let me know, and let me know what you think of it compared to the Clairefontaine. So I'm getting some good layers down now in my water, and we've got a nice layer of pastel down, so everything is blending really, really nicely at this point. The more pastel you have down, the easier it is to blend. The first layers are always the roughest, and no pun intended from this rough paper, but we're just going to smudge in our water now, because we want that to be kind of blurry, because it is the reflection of the duck. There's not going to be a lot of detail in that part. There will be some, especially when you get closer to the body of the duck, but for the most part all of the details will be blurry, and it will just look like he's reflecting in kind of a calm water. So now we're going to go in and we're going to start slowly putting in more and more detail. So now we're defining more of those feathers, and we're going to go back into that eye and strengthen that, and we're going to do the beak. But now is the upper layers. So at this point you should really have had most of your base layers down and blended in, and then you're going to start going in with your little strokes for that furry little part of the duck. And you see, I like to put down a lot of color underneath, because that shows through. When you start to put those details on there, you do see some of that underlying color peeking through, and it gives him more dimension. So he's going to be looking really, really furry and fuzzy. And I'm going in and I'm just kind of strengthening all of those colors in the water, and we're going to clean all that up. If you guys are enjoying my content and you're following along with me, please smash that like button. It means a lot to me and it keeps me going and keeps my channel going. So just give me a like. So for my stick pastels today, I'm using the new pastel from Prismacolor, and that is a harder pastel, not quite as chalky and soft, and of course the carbothellos and the pan pastel. But I like these Prismacolors so far very much. They're still creamy. They're a little harder than the Sennelier and some of the other ones that you can get, but I like the way they lay down and I like the way everything blends in. And Prismacolor obviously is known for their bright tones. They have several different sets. I got a big set, but they do have like earth tones, and they'll have skin tones, and they'll have landscape ones. But if you get the big set, there's quite a lot of variation in colors, and there's some really brights and then some really good earth tones. So and they're not that expensive. So if you want a good starter set, that new pastel from Prismacolor is pretty good. So really up until this point, we haven't really needed real sharp pencils. As I go in with the final little fuzzy, feathery final layers, I am going to go in with some real sharp pencils. So to sharpen my little pencils, I use a craft knife, or you can use a craft knife and then rub it on some sandpaper to get a finer point. Or if you can find a good sharpener that works for you, like a handheld sharpener. I do have the one from carbothello, but they do get really dull really quickly. One way to kind of preserve your sharpener is to, every couple of pencils, sharpen a graphite pencil in between, and this kind of sharpens the blade a little bit. But you know, a craft knife works just as well. With a little piece of sandpaper, you can get a good point. But all of those real furry, fuzzy parts of the duck, you like a nice sharp pencil. So now we're just going to put in our final little details. You want to pop your highlights, you want to deepen your shadows, and just kind of clean everything up. Make sure everything is nicely blended together, and just give it a good once over and see what you need to refine a little bit. Now that we're on our way. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you followed along with my tutorial. You can find this image on Pixabay, and you can find all of the materials I used today in the description box below. Please leave me a comment and consider subscribing. Join Team Michelle from Michelle Morius Art. I'd love to have you, and I'd love to hear from you guys. I do read all of your comments, and I do reply back to you. I want to thank you so much for joining me, and happy art.